there's some public polling already, there's more coming, and there's some private polling that suggests that nationally in the battleground states, she's not ahead. She might be ahead on paper, but well within the margin of error. And there's some battleground states now where I think Donald Trump's on this trajectory is going to be ahead. And it may be, regardless of what happens in the interview and regardless what happens in the debate, it may be that by the middle of September, when things have calmed down, when the Trump campaign have had time to prey on some of the weaknesses that I suggested, that he's ahead in all the Sun Belt states and ahead in Pennsylvania and competitive in Michigan and Wisconsin, which would be roughly where Joe Biden was before the debate, with a single path to 270 electoral votes, the 3 Great Lakes states and Nebraska too. And that'd be a scary position for the Democratic Party to be in from mid-September through Election Day.
And it just got worse. That interview last night was, according to one report, an absolute dumpster fire. And everyone saw it. Everyone. Kamala's scripted, pre-recorded, 18-minute CNN fiasco sitting next to her emotional support animal is getting absolutely ridiculed all across social media today. It was an abject disaster, and it gets worse from there. We're going to see the latest polling that Mark Halperin, who you just heard there, a former ABC News reporter, the polls he's referring to are a complete nightmare for the Democrats. And wait until you see the new ad that Robert Kennedy and his running mate Nicole Shanahan are now running. This is going to make your weekend. This commercial alone makes the realignment between Trump and Kennedy all worth it. You're going to absolutely love it. Greetings, everyone. It is Live Stream Friday. I am your host, Dr. Steve, your Patriot Professor, here to help you stay sane in these insane times. So whatever you do, make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. We are live on YouTube, Rumble, Twitter, you name it. We got a jam-packed show for you today. We're going to dive right in. A quick reminder, if you want to ask me your questions today, because YouTube has suspended our super chats, having completely demonetized us, just click on that link below, or you can go to fight.turleytalks.com, join any one of our levels of support, and you have instant access to our very own virtual platform where you can ask me all your questions. I'll be happy to answer them on this live stream. So just click on that link below, go to fight.turleytalks.com, join any level of support that you like, and you can ask me all your questions. It will be my honor to answer them on this live stream. Today is, of course, August 30th, just 68 days or so away from the election day. We, the proud members of the ever-expanding Maga movement, we are excited. We're pumped. We're completely and totally right. I mean, we shut down any and all momentum coming out of that Democrat joke of a convention with a historic realignment between the populist left and the populist right, and Robert Kennedy joining forces with President Trump. Trump almost immediately got a 2 to 3 point bump in the polls, particularly in the swing states, all as Kamala's polling began to sink like a rock, despite the best efforts of the legacy media, polling, this polling mafia media trying to prop up her numbers with these ridiculous response bias polls. We, the MAGA movement, are not even remotely fooled by it. We know we're winning. We know Trump is stronger than he has ever been. We know that he is more popular than he has ever been, that he is better, far better positioned to win this upcoming election than he ever was, ever in 2016 or in 2020. We know that, and we're pumped. We're ready to go. We're rocking. We're taking the steps needed to secure the election. We're registering voters at a record number. Republicans are far outpacing Democrats, even in California. Republican registration is crushing it, even in freaking California. But most especially my own backyard here in the key swing state of Pennsylvania, we're out registering Democrats 4-1. We are pumped. We are excited. We are elated. We cannot wait to take this new populist realignment to the polls and vote for the historic return of number 45 as number 47. Over on the other side, however, on the Democrat side, this day, August 30th, 68 days away from the election. For the other side, this day is a nightmare. It's a nightmare from which they cannot wake up. Make no mistake. The Democrats are in an absolute panic right now. That interview, that supposed gift, that CNN scripted, pre-recorded, choreographed, edited, wrapped in a box with a bow on top interview was an abject train wreck. And everyone saw it. Everyone. It wasn't just her inability to give an intelligible answer. It was the optics of the whole thing. Someone pointed out that Kamala looked completely dwarfed, like when you go to a back to school night and the teacher doesn't have enough adult-sized chairs, so mom has to take the kinder chair. That was from Roseanne Hoge, I believe. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Because that's exactly what it looked like. But more than that, during the interview, I mean, she just looked
Republican to your cabinet.
She looked tired. She was slumped over. She looked like she didn't want to be there. She often hesitated in her answers. She slurred her words. That's why so many people on social media today are asking whether she was drunk. She was constantly looking down. Are you noticing that? She was constantly looking down as if referencing notes. It was an optics disaster. I love this. Somebody posted this on X. These are the faces actors make when trying to remember their lines. I mean, look at that. That's so good. Now, frankly, the disaster actually all started before the interview with a clip that CNN shared to preview the interview. Now, again, make no mistake. A preview, as someone who's in broadcasting, a preview is always one of the best moments of the upcoming show, right? It's one of the most enticing moments because the whole point of the clip is to get you to want to watch the whole thing. So as far as CNN editors were concerned, this, I kid you not, this is the best Kamala had to offer.
Generally speaking, how should voters look at some of the changes that you've made, that you've explained some of here in your policy? Is it because you have more experience now and you've learned more about the information? Is it because you were running for president in a Democratic primary? And should they feel comfortable and confident that what you're saying now is going to be your policy moving forward?
Dana, I think the most important and most significant aspect of my policy perspective and decisions is my values have not changed. You mentioned the Green New Deal. I have always believed, and I have worked on it, that the climate crisis is real, that it is an urgent matter to which we should apply metrics that include holding ourselves to deadlines around time. We did that with the Inflation Reduction Act. We have set goals for the United States of America and by extension the globe around when we should meet certain standards for reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, as an example. That value has not changed. My value around what we need to do to secure our border, that value has not changed. I spent 2 terms as the Attorney General of California prosecuting transnational criminal organizations, violations of American laws regarding the illegal passage of guns, drugs, and human beings across our border. My values have not changed.
So,
Now, you did just hear her say that. and I'm going to quote it. I'm going to quote it just to confirm for you that you were just burdened with that. This is what she said, quote, "We should apply metrics that include holding ourselves to deadlines around time. According to the queen of word salads, it is now the highest priority that we as a nation have deadlines around time." Deadlines around time. Gang, do I even need to ask, what is a deadline? If I say to you, you have a deadline here, what did I just say? Can you imagine someone coming back and saying, oh, by deadline, you mean I had to have it done by a certain time? Really? I didn't know the deadline involved time. I didn't know that because I'm voting for Kamala, right? But according to Kamala, that's something that is a number one priority for this nation, is that we need to add to the definition of the deadline to include time. And you'll notice, to make it even worse, as if it could get worse, Dana Bash asked the question of why she's flip-flopping on so many issues, which, by the way, she never answered. You notice that? Why are you flip-flopping on so many issues? My values haven't changed. Yes, but your issues have. Your positions have. Your positions have changed dramatically. But I digress. Dana Bash asked that question while at the same time providing Kamala with multiple choice answers. Why are you flip-flopping so much? Is it because you've matured? That's the first question. That's the first option. Is it because you're mature? Is it because you're just getting better? Or is it because you previously were running a Democrat primary? You know, select A, B, or C. I mean, again, you just compare that T-Bowl interview, and that's what it was. It wasn't a softball interview. This was T-Bowl. This was nursery school. You compare that toddler interview with Dana Bash's ridiculously hostile interview with J.D. Vance, which he knocked out of the park, by the way. They're intellectually just at completely different levels. But Bash not only asked questions that read like Democrat talking points, she actively pushed back and defended and championed Kamala Harris in that interview. Hell, she did a better job defending Kamala than Kamala does. Now, I came across a perfect example of how the legacy media plays favorites here, okay? If you need, go ahead and look this up. You can find this on Twitter. Just do, I think I did CBS News, Trump tips, tax tips, CBS News, Trump tax tips. I think I did that because I found this somewhere else, but this interview made me think of this. Look at this thing. Yeah, blow it up so we can all see it. So the original one, the one on the left, if you're listening by way of our 20 million podcast downloads here, we're looking at two CBS tweets out. The first one is from June 17th, 2024. Former President Donald Trump's vow to stop taxing tips would cost the federal government up to $250 billion. That's billion with a B, over 10 years, according to an unnamed, nonpartisan watchdog group. Anytime they say nonpartisan, you know they're far left-wing nuts. So that was from CBS News on June the 17th. Here's CBS News. Here's their tweet on August 12th. Vice President Kamala Harris is rolling out a new policy position saying she'll fight to end taxes on tips for service and hospitality workers. and then look at the two images, gang. Those of you can see, right? If you're not on podcast, look at the two images. Look at them. Trump scowling under a gray overcast sky. And then you got Kamala, and she's like, she's in front of an excited audience, animated, ready to fight for you. Seriously, this would make Kim Jong-un blush. Even he would tell his North Korean media press, yo, guys, don't make it so obvious. But needless to say, that interview, it went all downhill from there. For example, here's Kamala's answer for what she would do on day one of her presidency. Now, again, keep in mind, just by contrast, it's a very specific question. What are you going to do on day one? Trump has answered it numerous times. I'm going to close the border immediately. I'm going to do exactly what Biden and Harris could have been doing every single day of their administration over these last 3.5 years. I'm going to close the border immediately. I'm going to, and then I'm going to drill, baby, drill. I'm going to sign an executive order that removes all impediments to energy independence on day one. I'm going to close the border and we're going to drill, baby, drill. Contrast that with how the Democrats' new nominee, somebody who did not get a single vote in the primaries, here's how she answered that very same question.
If you are elected, what would you do on day one in the White House?
Well, there are a number of things. I will tell you, first and foremost, one of my highest priorities is to do what we can to support and strengthen the middle class. When I look at
Can we stop? Can you guys stop for a second?
aspiration,
Can you stop?
Well-
How long did it take her to say that? Well, first of all, good question. One of my first priorities that I've been thinking about, for all my life, I mean, she didn't know how to answer the question. She's literally trying to search for something. I'm sorry. Keep going.
there are a number of things. I will tell you, first and foremost, one of my highest priorities is to do what we can to support and strengthen the middle class. When I look at the aspirations, the goals, the ambitions of the American people, I think that people are ready for a new way forward, in a way that generations of Americans have been fueled by hope and by optimism. I think, sadly, in the last decade, we have had in the former president someone who has really been pushing an agenda and an environment that is about diminishing the character and the strength of who we are as Americans, really dividing our nation, and I think people are ready to turn the page on that.
So what would you do day one?
Day one, it's going to be about, one, implementing my plan for what I call an opportunity economy. I've already laid out a number of proposals in that regard, which include what we're going to do to bring down the cost of everyday goods, what we're going to do to invest in America's small businesses, what we're going to do to invest in families, for example, extending the child tax credit to $6,000 for families for the first year of their child's life, to help them buy a car seat, to help them buy baby clothes, a crib. There's the work that we're going to do that is about investing in the American family around affordable housing, a big issue in our country right now. So there are a number of things on day one.
Now, this is hard. There's a simple test here. No, this isn't hard. Objectively speaking, if you're not all in with Kamala, then you're just a rabid ideologue. But I mean, seriously, so let's just say you're interested in Kamala. All right, maybe you're considering voting for her. Just ask yourself, what is she going to do on day one of her presidency? Explain to all of us here, what is she going to do? Exactly. Precisely. What is she going to, based on what you just heard, explain to us precisely what is she going to do on day one of her presidency? Is she going to sign anything? Is she going to issue an executive order? Is she even going to hold a meeting? What is she going to, and this is key, do? What is she going to do? The answer was so pathetically and obviously vague so as to be utterly worthless. That's not my opinion. Frank Luntz, the focus group guy, the rabid never Trumper, said exactly that. Again, this is a guy who wanted Kamala to knock it out of the park in this interview. He wanted her to succeed. He wanted to frolic around celebrating, oh, we're going to win a landslide. Instead, his jaw dropped when he heard answers like that. Non-answers. This is clearly someone who is not ready for prime time, as admitted by the ones who were actually cheering for her. And the legacy media is already in damage control. I mean, wait till you see the CNN panel last night. It was hilarious. But first, gang, if you are just joining us, remember, if you want to ask me your questions, because YouTube has suspended our super chats, having totally demonetized our channel, just click on that link below or go to fight.charlietalks.com. Join any one of the levels of support that you see. You have instant access to our very own virtual platform where you can ask me all your questions. I'll be happy to answer them on this live stream. Also, I know a lot of you are prepped with food and water if things were to collapse, but are you equally prepped for handling medical emergencies? Well, now you can be, thanks to the Wellness Company. Gang, they're amazing. They've given me and my family the peace of mind to handle any medical crisis, from tick bites to the next pandemic. The Wellness Company's medical emergency kit is a true lifeline. Gang, it's awesome. I got my kit, and it is full of chock full of essential meds. I got ivermectin, I got antibiotics, I've got antivirals as all part of my prepping strategies. I mean, this kit gives you the real peace of mind for this area of preparedness. And the Wellness Company, you know them. They're a team of renowned medical professionals. They include Dr. Peter McCullough, Dr. James Thorpe, Dr. Harvey Risch, and a whole other host of truth-seeking doctors. This medical emergency kit really does set the gold standard for safety and prevention. So don't wait until like the next crisis is here, only to regret you didn't do something about it when you could have. Get peace of mind now by visiting twc.health/Turley, and then just use code Turley for an exclusive $45 off and free shipping. You heard that right. Use promo code Turley for $45 off your order, and you're going to get free shipping to boot. Just click on that link below or go to twc.health/Turley. Gang, I got my emergency pack. Now it's time for you to get yours. Click on that link below right now. Is it kit? Is it pack? What is it? Kit. All right. I feel like Kamala. All right. As I said, the media now is already in damage control mode from that disaster of an interview. Here's the CNN panel right after the interview. This speaks for itself. This is absolutely hilarious. Roll the tape.
I don't think she moved the ball that much forward. I don't think there's a policy separation that they've created with Biden. Obviously, she gave a kind of personal defense of him.
Now, you might not like the way she answered him, but she answered him as a capable, qualified leader. And I do think I think she moved the ball forward a little bit. You know, maybe she didn't score a touchdown.
I think the two biggest issues coming out of Biden for her are the economic policies, which she clearly wants to embrace, but also the immigration policies. Dana asked her if she had anything to say about what they did for 3.5 years leading up until the back and forth this year. Completely sidestepped it, did not answer it. She goes back to her time as Attorney General. But again, absolutely nothing, no responsibility, no reflection at all on the day one executive actions or anything else they did for 3.5 years, or anything she said in her previous campaign, which was to have the most permissive immigration structure. She's trying to skip a block of time at the debate. Trump cannot allow it.
Did you hear that one? I think she moved the ball a little bit. A little bit. It wasn't a touchdown, but she moved the ball a little bit. It was a scripted, it was a pre-taped interview that was edited. It could not possibly have been more favorable to Kamala. And she still turned it into a train wreck. This is the best they've gone, and everyone on that panel knew it. Every single one of them knew it. Even that lady said, "I think she moved it a little bit. I do. I think she moved it a little. It was a 0.001 inch, but she moved it." And to make matters even worse, as if it couldn't possibly get worse, CNN framed it on TV as if it were a live interview. Did you see that? Look at the bottom right corner. Look at it. It says CNN live. But it wasn't live. It was pre-recorded. It was fully edited. She's even looking down at the table as if she's looking at her notes, which suggests she was given the questions ahead of time. Again, this really foregrounds something that Tucker actually often remarks on. Tucker notes, he spent his whole life among our elite. His father was a journalist in Washington. He spent his entire life living amidst our permanent political class in D.C. And one of the things he's noticed is just how utterly incompetent they've become. So the more ideologically recalcitrant they are, the more their cognitive critical thinking skills erode. And we're seeing it on both sides of the camera here. We're seeing a Democrat candidate who is clearly incapable of rising to this occasion. I mean, her polls are only going to sink further and further from this point forward. Her incompetence is second only to someone who is actually physically suffering from cognitive decline, senility, who is then being broadcast to the world through a media outlet that's suffering from its own confidence crisis. I mean, you heard that panel, for the exception of Scott Jennings. I really like Scott. He's the lone Republican commentator on CNN. He's great, but with the exception of him, I mean, let's just say the IQ level on that panel ain't the highest. I mean, their frames of reference by which they analyze and interpret the political scene today is pretty substandard. It's pretty underwhelming. And you could see it even in the production, with them claiming that this was a live interview when it was clearly pre-recorded. Now, it gets even worse for Kamala and the Democrats, if you can believe it. It gets even worse because now the polls are coming out. And just like we predicted, we talked about this exactly 1 week ago today with the realignment of Kennedy and Trump. Trump's polls are surging and her polls are falling like a rock. What I'm about to show you is the latest from Quinnipiac. Now, if you don't know, Quinnipiac is as Democrat-leaning, is as Democrat-fawning, is as Democrat-supporting in the polling as you can get. I mean, look at what they tried to pass off on the American public back in 2020. Gang, take if you could see it. I don't know if you could see it all the way at the bottom. Ooh, we kind of. Do we see? Yes, we can. Yes, we can. I don't know if you could possibly blow that up. Oh, you could. Yeah, there you go. Excellent. Second to last. That was the polling from August 21st to August 26th, the closest proximity to where we are right now in the election. So this was from 2020, August 21st to August 26th. They had Biden with a 16-point lead. They had a Biden with a 16-point lead. Now, take a look at where we are from Quinnipiac, the same polling outlet, same methodology, same samplings. Take a look at where we are right now. Switch to the next poll. Thank you. This is the Quinnipiac poll that just dropped yesterday. It's Kamala Harris by a point, 49 to 48. Kamala Harris head-to-head by a point within the margin of error. And again, just to underscore how pathetic Quinnipiac is, they had Biden up 11 the day before the election, the day before he, quote, won by just 40,000 votes. Our favorite polling analyst, Rich Barris of the People's Pundit, said it best. When a Democrat has a 1-point lead in the post-convention Quinnipiac poll, they are in deep shit. No one says it quite like Rich. Rich does not pussyfoot around. He says it the way it needs to be said. Now, on top of it all, take a look at this, gang. I mean, this is the new election forecast from freaking Nate Silver, formerly 538, the darling boy, the legacy media, the darling forecaster of the legacy media. Look at this. Trump is back in the lead. Trump is on top. Trump, as of today, has a 5-point lead in Silver's election forecast model. It's 52 chance of he has a 52% chance of winning, is over against Kamala's 47% chance. This after 3 weeks of Kamala being on top of Nate Silver's election forecasting model. And the key here is that Trump is now back in the lead a week after the DNC convention, a week after Kamala was supposed to get a double-digit bounce. And by the way, I'm no big fan of Nate Silver. I agree totally with Rich Barris. I think the guy's a fraud, but even frauds are now seeing it here. again, we have to underscore how bad this is. This is not supposed to be happening. This train wreck of an interview is not supposed to be happening. Trump is not supposed to be back in the lead. Hillary had a 10-point lead this time in the race in 2016. Biden was up by double digit. Quinnipiac had him up by 16 points at this time in the race in 2020. What was so extraordinary about that last convention that we saw, that clown show that we saw last week, is that Kamala literally got no bounce. That's not good. The polls remain relatively fixed. Interestingly enough, we talked about Polymarket, right? The betting markets actually shifted way over to Trump. They had a double-digit swing to Trump during the course of the week, largely because they knew of what was going on with Bobby Kennedy. The Kennedy-Shanahan team timed that. I know they did it with Trump, but they timed that perfectly, because Shanahan mentioned on Monday, just when the Democrat clown show was beginning, she mentioned on Monday that they were seriously considering dropping. This is on a widely viewed podcast, that they were seriously considering dropping out of the race and endorsing Trump and aligning with Trump and actually joining forces with Trump. And so all that week, the betting markets were waiting for that announcement, because they knew there would be a big swing over to Trump in the polling, just like what we saw. And so now we're seeing Trump surging in the polls, and we're seeing Kamala comparably dropping in the polls, dropping like a rock, because now Republicans are coming back from vacation and they're starting to answer the polling, right? Everybody knows you have a huge pro-Democrat response bias polling just baked into the cake of August. All pollsters know this. Republicans inordinately have children, more children than Democrats. Secular liberals have basically, by and large, stopped having kids. Eric Kaufman's Shall the Religious Inherit the Earth has documented that in over 300 pages of very well footnoted study. And so Republicans tend to inordinately be on vacation during August. They're not around to answer the phone for the pollsters, or however the pollsters are taking their samples. Now, at the beginning of September, they start to come back. And August, September, they start to come back. Now they're answering the polls. So the important point here is that if you've been a regular to our channel, and if not, make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. But if you're a regular to this channel, you know that Kamala never, ever, ever had the leads that the New York Times, that CNN, and even the most recent idiocy from Fox were claiming she had. Fox always polls left. I don't know why. Ask Rupert Murdoch, but they do so in every election cycle. It's who they farm it out to, I don't know. But these were all response bias polls. I've been telling you now for 4 weeks. Rich Barris has been telling you that. Robert Barnes has been telling you that. Rasmussen has been telling you that. These were all nonsense polls. And now reality is starting to hit a lot of the Democrats. And you're seeing it. Again, the key here is that there are a number of pollsters who, over the last 3.5 weeks, they have been analyzing the crosstabs, and they found that virtually all the polls that we have been seeing over the summer are all suffering from ridiculous response bias. They're not predictive of what is actually going to happen in November. They weren't predictive, and obviously you saw it. They weren't predictive in August of 2016. They weren't predictive in August of 2020. They're not predictive now, especially in this unique circumstance of Kamala getting literally coronated without a single primary vote to her name. And even with that lead that she had, that wasn't ever enough. Again, you have to make sure you put all this polling in perspective. Hillary was up by 10. Biden was up by 16. And Hillary lost and Biden won by 40,000 votes. So if Kamala isn't up by double digits, forget about it. She ain't winning. It's not enough. She could be up by 4. She could be up by 6. She could be up by 7. It's not enough. When all is said and done, this is the reality smack. I have to do this to you guys every once in a while. You guys get a little nervous. Oh, no, Fox. Fox is a corporatist shill for secular globalism run by Rupert Murdoch, who just figured out, I can make a lot of money over these stupid conservatives. Don't get me wrong, Fox. I like Gutfeld and others and Gene Perino and all, but give me a break, guys. Fox, seriously? Trump is doing better today than he has ever done. He is stronger today than he has ever been. His polls are higher today than they have ever been. His retroactive approval rating is the highest it's ever been today. He's more popular than he has ever been, and the Democrat is weaker against him than they've ever been. There's no way around that. You should have again, we're not trying to be complacent, but you should have confidence going into this election like you didn't have in 2016 or 2020. You should have comparably more confidence given the data that's coming in. So now polls are starting to reflect a far more accurate sampling of the percentage of Republicans that'll be coming out on election day or voting early. Republicans are now being rightly sampled again. And what do you know? Just like we heard Mark Halperin say at the beginning of this video, what do you know? The polls are starting to rearrange themselves to looking just like they looked before Biden dropped out, which wasn't good for the Democrats. That's what they were hoping to solve. But it gets even better. We're now seeing the fruits of the populist realignment between Kennedy and Trump. We got the first ad that dropped from the Kennedy-Shanahan team. Wait until you see this beauty. You're going to want to share this far and wide all over the weekend. But first, gang, I want to give a huge shout out to Ground News and their amazing app that reveals media bias like nothing I've ever seen before. Just click on that link below or go to ground.news/Steve to check them out. So, for example, I'm sure you all heard about the House GOP having found Biden guilty of impeachable conduct. But for me, this is where my sponsor Ground News comes in so handy. So we can see that there are over 180 articles on the story about Biden's impeachable conduct. If we look at the coverage details and bias distribution, we can actually see that most of the coverage is from the center and about the same amount of coverage from the left and the right. But then what's really cool here is you get to compare headlines to see what each side is saying or isn't saying. So notice we got one headline from the right emphasizing how damning the report is, while the headline on the left downplays its importance. So it's pretty clear that the left doesn't want to bring more attention to this than they have to. And thanks to Ground News' blind spot feed, we don't miss out on stories covered by only one side during the news cycle. So with a wild election that's looming, gang, I simply could not recommend Ground News more. So just go to ground.news/Steve or scan the QR code as you see it right there on that screen. We're high tech here, right? Scan that QR code or use my link down below. Click on that link. Whatever you do, you're going to get 40% off the Vantage plan if you scan the QR code or click on the link below. The Vantage plan is what I've got, and it gives you unlimited access to all their features. So when you support Ground News, you're also supporting the work we do here at Turley Talks to bring you the most important news out there. So click on that link below or scan that QR code right now. All right, gang, here it is. If this doesn't make your weekend, nothing will. This is the brand new ad that was put together by our new brothers in arms, the Kennedy-Shanahan team that's just joined up with the Maga movement just a week ago. Gang, here it is.
You or your loved ones suffering from illnesses such as TDS, also known as Trump derangement syndrome? Do you dismiss or deny the current issues facing our country, such as historic inflation, illegal immigration, corporate corruption, World War III escalations, and the chronic disease epidemic? Are you willing to elect someone who was the least popular vice president in modern history, and who offers no policy or vision for America simply because your brain keeps telling you anyone but Trump? If so, you might be struggling from TDS. Introducing independence. Independence allows you the freedom to finally think independently once again. Instead of believing everything you hear from the mainstream media, independence allows for constructive critical thinking.
I used to hear people on the news say things like,
Donald Trump and the movement he has encouraged are a threat to democracy.
and I instantly believed it. With independence, I now realize the media is run by the Democrat elite, who are a corrupt oligarchy that censors free speech, silences political opponents, supports forever wars, and abandons democracy by anointing its candidates.
Independence may not be for everyone. If you enjoy being lied to about your president's cognitive abilities, support Orwellian totalitarianism, or are excited about communist fiscal policy, independence may not be right for you. Common side effects of independence may include an awakening of rational thought, successfully identifying propaganda, freedom of choice, loss of hatred, anti-narcissistic behavior, and love of democracy.
I used to blindly hate whoever my party was running against. I didn't care about facts or policy because I was hopelessly indoctrinated. With independence, I'm much more interested in policies that uphold democracy, and I truly care about the health of our country and its citizens.
Ask your doctor if independence is right for you, and enjoy your freedoms once again.
Absolutely wonderful. I mean, that really captures Robert Kennedy's refrain. We need to love our children more than we hate each other. And man, does that capture it, at least when it comes to the Robert Kennedy, Nicole Shanahan wing of our electorate and the MAGA movement. Again, that was shared by Nicole Shanahan on her X account. It's getting millions upon millions of views as it ought to. If you don't know, Nicole Shanahan was Robert Kennedy's one-time running mate, who's now all in with MAGA, as you can see there. And just to show you how endearing this is, how much the Kennedy-Shanahan movement has aligned itself with MAGA, take a look at this. This is such an amazing insight into the historic political realignment that's happening right now, that's taking Kamala and the legacy media totally by it's completely blindsiding them. Check this out.
Actually, the best part of joining forces with Trump has been seeing MAGA, which I'm learning so much about. I was completely misinformed about what MAGA is. I don't know if you've taken any deep dives into MAGA world, but I was just under the impression that they were gun-toting radicals who wanted to come to my doorstep and rip my liberal family out of my house. And I don't know, do horrible things to liberals. And that's how MAGA has been sold to a huge portion of America by the mainstream media. And I have to say that what I have learned about MAGA is that they're actually their own party. They're their own grassroots organization that chose Donald Trump. They have so much power in deciding where to point their energy and support. And there are really, really smart, thoughtful, intellectual people within MAGA. I've received beautifully written notes from MAGA supporters, and they were, our base didn't know how to engage with MAGA. Our base was not, MAGA oriented in the sense of even knowing who and what MAGA was and what their infrastructure was. In many ways, it's an online viral movement. And
Right.
so the coming together of, and they gave us the name Maga, Make America Healthy Again. Have you seen?
Yes, I've seen it. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I mean, we didn't come up with that. We're getting hats made. But the coming together of these two groups over the last week hasn't even been a full week yet. But watching that happen has been really glorious, because that was always the vision of this unity movement, this desire to heal the divide. And even though these are just two pockets within a much larger group of the American demographic, they're two very powerful pockets. And to find common ground has been one of the most motivating, optimistic things I've seen in recent in recent political time.
Absolutely. And amen to that. And it promises to be a landslide coalition as well. Now, a couple of things that struck me about what Nicole just said there, which was absolutely beautiful. And I'm sure many of you are very moved by that right now, very heartened by what she just said there, which was so sincere. But of course, a couple of things do stick out. One is it reminds me of what Brandon Struck of the Walk Away movement, the founder of the Walk Away movement. It reminds me of his testimony of what ultimately red-pilled him. So if you don't know, Brandon is a gay hairdresser. He voted for Hillary in 2016. In fact, as part of his walk away testimony, you could see him cringe saying it, but he even admitted to crying on the morning of November 9th, 2016, when he found out that Hillary lost. But he noticed that as he started to listen to Trump's policies, his views on border security, economic security, cultural security, Brandon really found them to be quite compelling, quite persuasive. And he started to say, you know what, I think I really support this. And when he would share that with his friends, particularly his gay friends, his liberal friends, they would all basically castigate him like he was a traitor, like he was a heretic. And they said things like, don't you know Mike Pence wants to burn you at the stake? Don't you know that Trump wants to throw you into prison? And that's when he suddenly realized what the left does. It threatens people into compliance. It threatens people into submission through the mechanism of fear. So fear is the primary tool of the left. And I could still remember when I was in academia, I could still remember a student looking at me and telling me that this was back in 2016, probably say September, October of 2016. He told me if Trump were to win that election, as I was advocating back then, I predicted he would win. But he said, well, if you're right, if Trump wins, racism is going to be unleashed in the country. I mean, racism is it's going to roll back all our civil rights, and racism is going to reign. And I just remember looking at him, just going, and again, kind of making sense of all of this, just going, so you're a Democrat largely out of fear. You're not a Democrat for a positive reason. You're a Democrat solely for the negative. And that's exactly what Nicole was saying there. She thought of MAGA in thoroughly stigmatizing terms rooted in fear, which in turn functioned, she did not know this at the time, in turn functioned to keep her subservient to the left. So the fear was radically manipulative, which fear generally is. So that's the first thing that stood out. But the second thing is the realization over what this new populist realignment really is all about. We have so much more, she pointed out, we have so much more that unites us than divides us. That's so absolutely key. And that is not just mere sloganeering. All right, we can fill that out to show exactly what that means, right? What she is doing is she is redefining the political divide away from the horizontal, left versus right. We talk about this all the time, left versus right, liberal versus conservative, Democrat versus Republican. She is redefining that political divide vertically. The horizontal divide is being redefined vertically as the people versus the political class, as the ruled versus the rulers. She recognizes that the political establishment has been genius in terms of how it uses fear and wedge issues to divide us, to deliberately divide us, so as to maintain their power. It's technically known as resentment politics. We talk about this a lot on the channel as well. Resentment politics involves deliberately dividing the population. It's when politicians deliberately divide the population by fostering resentment against a portion of the population. So they could be the deplorables, they could be racist, they could be sexist, they could be white supremacists, they could be Christian nationalists, all kinds of phobes. The whole purpose of fomenting resentment against one portion of the population is to deflect resentment from ever being projected onto the political class itself. You got to get that. The whole purpose of fomenting resentment against one portion of the population is to prevent or deflect that resentment from ever being projected onto the political class itself. And Nicole is recognizing that if we redefine the political divide away from the resentment politics divide, which is a horizontal divide, which is pitting one portion of the population against the other portion of the population, left versus right, liberal versus conservative. If we redefine that horizontal divide into a vertical divide, the people versus the political class, the rule versus the rulers, then resentment is rightly projected on who it ought to be projected on, and that's the permanent political class. It's brilliant. It's wonderful. So that is what this populist realignment is ultimately all about. It's there to create a new, massive, nationwide political coalition that finally, once and for all, takes down the establishment and its vile, vitriolic, tyrannical, unelected deep state. The very deep state that is so desperately trying to impose upon us a presidential candidate that never even won a single primary vote. Not one. And with the way things are going, it looks like she ain't going to fare any better in November either. Over to you as our moderators, Josh and Mike, assemble your questions. Remember, if you want to ask me your questions because YouTube has suspended our super chats, just click on that link below. Join any one of our levels of support. You have access to our very own virtual platform where you can ask me all the questions you like. I'll be happy to answer them right here, right now on this live stream. Also, we often talk about how we can maintain and build up a conservative way of life. And one crucial aspect of that, of course, is our health. Staying strong physically and mentally isn't just about living longer, gang. It's about living better. So I have partnered with the amazing patriots over at Beam, because they're a health and wellness company that's put in the time and rigorous research to craft science-backed solutions that truly optimize every system in your body from the moment you wake up until you lay your head down to sleep. And that is where Beam has been amazing in my own life, okay? I am frankly a horrible sleeper. I used to toss and turn. I just have a hard time turning my brain off. And I really have a hard time falling asleep at night. I'm not kidding, gang. It could sometimes take me upwards of 2 to 3 hours to fall asleep. Well, I've been using Beam Dream for several weeks now. Gang, it's changed the way I sleep. It's changed. I'm out like a light. I mean, it's been a game changer. I am out within an hour after I sip this wonderful hot chocolate-like drink in the early evening. It's I tend to hit the sack around 9 o'clock, right? It's one of the most restful sleeps I've ever had throughout the night. Beam Dream. It's made with the highest quality sleep-promoting ingredients, all natural, help you unwind, just get that deep sleep you need and deserve. It's become a nightly ritual of mine that I look forward to every single day. Plus, I never wake up feeling groggy the next morning. I mean, look at me now. Look at me. I'm ready to rock and roll. I feel refreshed. I feel ready to take on the day. And gang, they're offering Turley Talks listeners an exclusive 40% off site-wide for a limited time. Whatever products they have that you're interested in, you get 40% off for if you're a Turley Talks listener. So just scan that QR code on the screen or use the link down below to get the best night's sleep of your life and propel your wellness journey to the next stage. Click on that QR code or click on that link. Shop Dream Beam. That's shopbeam.com/Turley Talks. That's shopbeam.com/Turley Talks and get your amazing discount. It's been amazing. It really has. It's been a game changer. I've loved it. Absolutely love it. As a matter of fact, it's actually, you got to watch it. Don't drive a car after you've been drinking. I mean, you're going to be tired. All right, what do we got, guys? What do we got? Vlad the Impaler. Given all the headwinds Europe is facing and the fact that the immigrant invasion continues unabated, living standards continue to deteriorate, civil liberties are getting crushed. And make sure you say Western Europe. Eastern Europe's doing a lot better. How likely do you think it is that another Austrian corporal will rise to power to reverse things? I don't know. I don't know if the structure is. Yeah, I don't know if the structure is in place for that. And we're just living in a different time. We're living in a time where the idea of centralization and a one-size-fits-all doesn't really make sense anymore. Look, Georgia Maloney is already starting to reverse course, and she's starting to crack down on the borders. She has to. Two-tier Keir is obviously a disaster in Britain, but that's going to be his downfall. I mean, his approval rating is imploding as we speak. I mean, Orban is held firm. Bulgaria is holding firm. Romania is holding firm. A lot of Eastern Europe has been doing well. But you're right. I mean, Europe has two choices. It's either going to renew itself as a civilizational, I would say a civilizational state. It could be via the European Union, or a civilizational continent where all the various nation states are reanimating their cultures, customs, and traditions, their unique cultures, customs, and traditions, which is what makes Europe so astonishingly wonderful. Or they're going to experience a cataclysmic collapse in society. I mean, there's just no way around that. Now, the good news is you got even people like Richard Dawkins, who's spent his entire adult career arguing against Christianity, now calling himself a cultural Christian, a civilizational Christian, because he recognizes that it's precisely the Christian civilization that has given him the freedom to be an atheist. And he knows he will have no such freedom were another religion to take over. So you are starting to see some red pilling and wake-up calls. But I'm with you. Could it be too late? Possibly. I mean, but look at what's happening in Sweden right now. Sweden was like the single most liberal nation in the whole of the continent. And now Jimmy Åkesson and the Sweden Democrats are in power. Now you have a nationalist populist coalition government in power, and they're pushing back against immigration big time. Didn't their foreign minister just come out and say, that's it? I mean, Sweden is just shutting the border. Now, again, I know they say it, and then a year later they open up. It's a bit sporadic and schizophrenic, but no, I'm with you, Vlad. I wouldn't black pill too much yet, but because I do think there's an awakening happening. I mean, the how many stabbings have to occur before people finally say enough? Now, again, it's the irony is it tends to be the stats show it's the young people that's the hope, because they're the least aligned with any of the major parties that are globalist sellouts. The center left, center right parties, they're globalist sellouts, and then do the bidding of the bullies in Brussels that themselves do the bidding of the dolts in DC. It's the younger voters, it's the Zoomers, it's the millennials that are very attracted to the so-called far right. Fortunately, it's the boomers that continue to be aligned with the establishment parties, allowing them to infest Europe with these ridiculous policies. But we'll see. I'm with you. It is very, very concerning. And if Europe doesn't get fully Orbanized, it's in trouble in the next, easily in the next 5 years. But I think it's a powder keg ready to explode. And I think the exploding part of the population is ready to change things permanently going forward, change things for the better. Tris Luth, Dr. Steve, do you think the Trump campaign should remind we the people that her statement on climate change and time refers to the WEF's Agenda 2030? Oh, yeah, sure, absolutely. And then administration is implementing it like a checklist to destroy our nation. Yeah, no, that would be That would be good. Yeah, anything to connect Kamala with the WEF would be wonderful, because the American people are far more prone to distrusting things like the WHO and the WEF than they have ever been. They were shocked what they saw. Now, looking back in retrospect, they were shocked what they saw in 2020. I mean, I can't even count how many people have been red-pilled because of what happened in 2020. Okay, nobody got more Democrat as a result of 2020. People got more MAGA. They got more populist, more nationalist after they saw the way, just the disaster of these transnational institutions like the World Economic Forum in Davos, the WHO, the way they ruined lives and the way they continue to want to ruin lives. So yeah, anything we could tie her with, the better. But I appreciate how you heard that echo with their actual agenda, their policy. Thank you, truthfully. And you're true to your name as well. Terry, did you hear about those two Wisconsin towns, Lawrence and Thornapple, that ditched all electronic voting machines, including ballot marking devices, and now face lawsuits from crooked Merrick Garland's Department of Justice? I most certainly did. I think they're going to push back big time. I think they will win, because the Supreme Court has made it clear all elections are local. Elections are statewide responsibilities, and Merrick Garland can threaten all he wants. He's not going to be able to do jack, especially before the election. So way to go, Lawrence and Thornapple. Mickey, if RFK stays on all the ballots that most states have him on, that won't let him off after he suspended his campaign. Will it hurt Trump and benefit Harris? Great question, Mickey. Yeah, and are they going to? My initial question: are they going to keep Biden on as well? If they can change out Biden, why can't they change out RFK? What's the problem? So obviously there's a lot of shenanigans going on. Shenanigery. I think I just made that word up. I don't think it's going to hurt him. I don't. I think the RFK Trump forces are aligned enough so that anyone who would put their name on RFK there would not be among the 60% that are now voting for Trump. So what the numbers that have come out over the course of the last week are pretty consistent. We're seeing it from a number of different pollsters. About 6 in 10 RFK Shanahan voters are now voting Trump. They said they're now voting Trump. The other 4 sort of dissipate. Maybe 2 will vote for Harris. The other 2 will vote another third party, or they won't vote at all. Figure they are the ones that'll be voting RFK, but they would not have voted for Trump to begin with. So no, I don't think we have, at this point, I don't think we have to worry about that. I don't. Again, I think it's a ploy. Obviously, it's more election interference. That's all the Democrats know how to do at this point, because they know nobody wants to vote for their candidate. They know that, so they're doing everything they can to hide her. They're doing everything they can to lie about her. They're doing everything they can to fabricate excitement. You've seen they've been busing. They've actually been busing Kamala supporters across state lines into her rallies. So it's all AstroTurf. It's 100% AstroTurf. Everybody who's following it knows it. There's just those who admit it and those who lie about it. So all they have are lies at this point. That's it. And some kind of shenanigan to try to sway the election inordinately and artificially in one direction. But I don't think at this point we have to worry about it too much. We'll see. We'll keep an eye on the polling there. Gator M, do you think there will be any debates? I do. I think she's going to stick around for the debate on the 10th, in just 12 days from now or so. I think she will. I doubt it's going to. I don't know. We'll see if ABC can do what they can to try to protect her. But I think it's going to be a disaster. Again, the problem with Trump is everybody already has a solid opinion on him. There's nothing to make this election all about Trump is to make the election about somebody, about old news. Nobody cares. What people are truly learning about is Kamala. And the more they learn, this has been her whole political career. The more they learn, the less they like her. It's that simple. That's the pattern. Joan, I've seen news that the DNC bumped Cornel West from the Pennsylvania ballot, but a Michigan judge told the DNC to shove it and ruled West should stay on the ballot. How does the DNC have the authority to remove him from the Pennsylvania ballot? Bad judge in Pennsylvania? And since West is anti-establishment, doesn't that make him a leftist populist? Yes. Oh, yeah. No, he's definitely a leftist populist. He's definitely outside of the establishment. As a matter of fact, he even came out and said that the Kamala team more or less tried to bribe him. They said they would pay for all of his election debt and campaign debt and then give him a seat at the table. So and he came out and said they literally tried to bribe me and so forth. So yeah, he's a populist left. He may be so far out that he doesn't have there isn't necessarily a place for him. I don't think so. I think he could be a part of the RFK Shanahan wing. I think he can help us reimagine race relations in a much more populist way that recognizes that race relations are actually at an all-time high. Racism is an all-time low. All the studies show that. Ask anyone, do you support interracial marriage? In the 1950s, 90% would have said no. Today, it's the opposite. 90% say yeah. These are what are called racist indicators. And you take any study, they're at an all-time low. So this is a time for us to come together. There's never been a time where we've been more united than we are. There's never been a time we've been more anti-war than we are right now, even at the height of Vietnam. So the divide between us and the permanent political class couldn't be wider. And I think Cornel West would be great to come on board this new populist realignment. We'll see. We'll see if that happens. I don't know how the DNC. Obviously the DNC does not have the power to knock somebody off of ballot themselves. So if he was knocked off Pennsylvania's ballot, it would have been because of a judge. But you rightly pointed out that a Michigan judge told the DNC to shove it. He is going to be on their ballot, and he and Jill Stein are going to steal tens of thousands of votes from Democrats. That is really that is an ominous warning sign for them, given how the last couple of elections, those swing states came down to tens of thousands of votes. Rock Dog, Dr. C, what do you think of Trump using RFK as the Punisher? For instance, pointing him to the CIA, then completely cleaning that house and dismantling it. Then the FDA and going after the drug companies and the corrupt food companies. And then finally, as an attorney general, to prosecute all these politicians, bureaucrats, and sewer rats. Yeah, I'm with you, man. I'm with you. They're all very different. So attorney general is supposed to be independent from the executive branch to hold everybody accountable. That's been so ridiculously politicized at this point with Merrick Garland, but it's same even before him. I mean, they were always politicizing it, always to the advantage of the swamp. I'm with you, Rockdo. I think RFK is the deep state's worst nightmare. I really do. I think the administrative state is scared to death of an RFK having real serious executive power. And he would have, he's going to be on the transition team. He, at the very least, is going to be picking the people that have that power. And so you could see that whoever he picks will be an extension of his goal of dismantling the administrative state that needs to be dismantled, because it is running our country right now. As we know, as you see, obviously Joe Biden is not running the country. So the deep state runs the country. Benton Collins, did Harris have a bad set of crib notes? She could not keep constant eye contact. I wonder what a body language expert would say about her interview. I noticed that too, Ben. I just noticed she just kept looking down. She barely looked in her eyes. It looked bad. The optics just from the very positioning of our chair. Just the room itself. The room was dark. It was a bleak kind of room, cold. It had a cubicle feel to it. And she looked tired. She slurred her words. She looked old. I don't mean that in a mean way. She just kind of, because she was looking down, she kind of looked wrinkly, and she did not look confident. And that, I assure people are saying, when all is said and done, all you need to do is hear what the universal assessment of that interview was. She did not move the needle. That's a nice way of saying it was bad. It was really bad. I mean, there is no, oh, it's okay, it didn't hurt. There is no, it's okay, it didn't hurt her in politics. That was bad. No, the rabid left is going to vote for her no matter what. The rabid left is going to vote for her no matter what. But the middle ground, the independent voter, forget about it. The centrist, forget about it. They looked at that and went, yikes, we replaced Biden with that. Jules, Patriot, is it possible to undo what has been done? Are we getting unburdened, Jules? To be all right. Yes, to be a free people, we have to undo what has been done. To be unburdened from what has been done. Yes, we can start again. We can start again, and societies do it all the time. So the Russian scholar Pitirim Sorokin, he's the founder of Harvard's sociology department. Back, if I recall, in the 1930s, he's a Russian-American sociologist. He documents how we see renaissance and renewal in civilization all the time. It's part of the pattern of civilization. So civilization starts in a sacred, what he called an ideational society. It starts in a highly religious, sacred society that flourishes in art and architecture and music and poetry. So you get your Venice and your Rome and, your Constantinople and your Paris and your St. Petersburg and, ancient Kyoto in Japan. If you ever go to Japan, you guys got to go to Kyoto, because I think it was the only city that wasn't bombed. So it has like the original architecture of Japan's golden era, the Meiji golden era. I mean, you just see all the great cities flourishing, all the beautiful art and architecture and music and poetry and like. But inevitably, societies begin to go secular. And by that, he called it sensate. And by that, he meant that in every society, you have secular needs, literally. Secular comes from the Latin seculum, which means worldly or world. So you have secular needs. You have to figure out how to cook. You have to figure out how to hunt and garden and agriculture, and you have to figure out how to build things, and you have to figure out how to keep marauders from stealing, and so you have to have a military, and you have to figure out economics, and you have to have bartering system or money system. So he would call that the secular side of the world. But he recognized that all societies, their secular was always a tangible, material, spatial representation of their deeper sacred realities. So our civic law, Harold Berman of Harvard University, a huge, huge volume, showed that our civic law is actually rooted in medieval canon law, the law of the church. Our international relations that was developed in the 19th century is actually rooted in medieval Christian international relations as practiced by both the Patriarch of Constantinople and the Pope in Rome. Our schooling that we have is inextricably linked to the ancient paideia, particularly an ancient Christian paideia that was developed in our schooling for 2,200 years. Our sense of history is based on BC and AD, with centered on Christ. All of our secular practices are always rooted in sacred practices. But at some point, society ends up, and he says it happens inevitably, it ends up going on a prodigal journey. The secular dislodges itself from the sacred and becomes self-functioning. It becomes its own feedback loop. But the problem is that so it doesn't even care about the sacred anymore. It is its own self-sustaining dynamic. But the problem is that it is dislodged itself, in dislodging itself from the sacred, it dislodges itself from eternal frames of reference. That's the sacred. Eternal frames of reference that can always renew society. And so secular society can't get renewed. It doesn't have a sacred source that can literally replenish it. So secular societies, you notice, always begin to rot. But when they rot, they end up turning into compost, because what's underneath the rot? What is secular society by definition? It's the tangible, material, spatial manifestation of the sacred. So when it dislodged itself from the sacred didn't go anywhere. It's still there because it's eternal. That's the point. So when so the secular society starts to fall, it rots, it turns into compost. And what does compost do? It reawakens the seeds of the sacred. So we do see renaissance and renewal all throughout history, and we'll see one here as well. But like going back to Vlad the Impaler's question, the question is just, how much of the rot are we willing to tolerate? How much of the rot are we willing to keep piling up over the blossoming seeds so as to prevent that blossoming from happening now? That's the question. So we can get through it. It's going to be rough, I know, but we'll get through it. Remember the great speech from Sam to Frodo at the end of the Two Towers in the movie. And he said, when we read those old stories, the stories of old when we were younger and things were so dark and dangerous, we never imagined how we could see the light again, how the sun could ever shine because the darkness was so great. But the sun does dawn again. And when it shines, it does shine all the brighter. Remember this too, Jules. Remember, evil is not a thing in of itself. Evil always is parasitic of something prior to itself. So life is inherently good. Evil is a parasite that lives off the good. So it's like a hole in a shirt. It's not a thing. Or darkness. What's darkness? It's the absence of light. You don't turn on darkness. You turn on the light. The good, the light, the true, the beautiful, that's the real thing. That's real reality, as it were. That's true existence. That's real being. And everything that's evil is parasitic of that truth, of that goodness. So truth and goodness always ends up shining eventually, because evil eventually, like a hole in the shirt, just ends up rotting and taking itself out. So you don't have to worry about it. We'll come back. Anita, how about the truth? Harris and Democrats deliberately allow open borders so illegal immigrants and fentanyl can come in and kill U.S. citizens. Our Constitution requires this nation and citizens be protected. Open borders is an act of treason. Harris is a serious problem because she is delusional. Anita, you said it beautifully. Wow, absolutely. And that's what's animating the new nationalism all over the world, is the extraordinary sense of border insecurity that is awakening an unprecedented angst among populations all over the West. And so absolutely, more and more populations are rising up to defend their border. But globalists hate borders by definition. Globalists know no frontiers. Borders are impediments to globalism, and they will knock them down every chance they get. Chip, since Michigan has discovered 100,000 fraud ballots submitted, is there a GOP effort to discover other states under this corruption? Apparently there is. Mike Whatley and Laura Trump are doing a lot of work here, and they aren't discovering them. That's the key. They are discovering. Now, I haven't heard of the explicit 100,000 in Michigan, but they are discovering. I mean, you just saw Greg Abbott just reported this last week that they purged over 1 million ineligible voters from their voting rolls in Texas. This has been gone since they passed the law back in 2021. So over the course of 3 years, they expunged 1 million. Texas is going so deep red, it's gonna knock your socks off. You were not going to believe how red Texas is going to go by a far deeper margin, far larger margin than in 2016, 2020. Same with Florida. I mean, Florida will be double digits right now. I mean, it's just crazy. Do you remember? You notice what you're not hearing anymore, by the way? Remember the first week of Kamala? Oh, we think we can win Florida now. Florida's in play. I mean, just these people are absolutely delusional. So, so I do believe they're doing that. Scott Presler's on the front lines of that with the voter registration, and then he's on the front lines with dealing with directly with any concerns about voter fraud in Pennsylvania. The good news is voter fraud in Pennsylvania seems to be down concomitantly with the request for mail-in ballots. They're down 62% from this time last year or so among Democrats. So that's that bodes well. So absolutely stay on top of election integrity. Stay on top of it. Don't just complain. Do something about it. Make sure something is done by it. Be very proactive. BW, do you think we have a severe enough recession depression before the election that will wake people up? Will we have World War III soon, especially if she cheats her way into office? I'll be honest with you, that does concern me. I mean, we are provoking Russia to no end. The last I heard, now we're giving Zelensky and the Ukrainians permission to send NATO missiles far into Russia. Right now, it's only been on the frontier, like we've seen with Kursk. But that's very, very dangerous here. We are on the cusp of a World War III. And I don't know what they will be desperate enough to provoke. Fortunately, again, I see Putin as very level-headed in this. Putin knows he's Putin is acting as if he has checkmated Zelensky and NATO. Zelensky's just a puppet in all this. He's acting as if he has checkmated NATO. And now NATO is writhing and scratching. I mean, he's a judo wrestler. He is acting as if he's brought NATO to the mat, and now he's kind of wrapped the gi around. I used to do judo wrestling. He's wrapped the gi around the neck, and it's just a matter of time before if they don't tap out, the referee will tap it out. They're going to sleep. Okay. You could do that in judo wrestling's ancient rules. He knows he's got you in a lock, and you're going down. It's just a matter of time before you go nighty-night. Now, in the meantime, they're trying to poke him in the eyes. They're trying to, hit him in the private part. They're doing whatever they can, flailing to hurt him, to make him do something, to release that grip and do something else. And it is technically called a cauldron that the Russians use, that they do have Eastern Ukraine under. And I don't think Putin is falling for it. I think he's just sitting back. We're seeing that with Kursk. He has exercised enormous restraint in that, and he's just simply sitting back and saying, okay, if you want more Ukrainians you want more Ukrainian casualties as a result of coming into Russia, go right ahead. We'll just surround you and we'll cut you off and we'll eventually take you out. But we have got you. We are fighting a war of attrition. The war of attrition means that we are a meat grinder, and everything you throw at us ends up getting destroyed. So eventually there's no more Ukrainian military, and we will have successfully pacified Ukraine and neutralized them as any possible NATO force. That is our goal. That's what we're going to do. So I just, believe it or not, I thank God for Putin. I'm just glad he's in there, because I think he's far more level-headed than the dolts in D.C. or the bullies in Brussels and NATO. In terms of recession, we'll see. It's bad. It's already bad enough. Most everyone says it's the economy that's the number one concern, and it is killing the Democrats. It was killing Biden. It's killing Kamala. And they knew, looking back, Trump was rocking with the economy. There's just no way around that. And so it's true, no sitting president has been successfully reelected if there's been a recession in the last 2 years of their presidency. I do think it's enough at this point. At least just the polls are bearing that out. Remember, Democrats are operating under a faulty assumption. And the faulty assumption was that they were losing because of their candidate. If they could just switch out their candidate with another one that nobody voted for, because they're the defenders of democracy, then that will stop the bleeding, and they'll get back into their position of where they should be as an incumbent party and win, 52 to 48%, something like that, 53 to 40%, whatever they thought they could do. And the cold hard truth was Biden wasn't losing because of his senility. He was losing by a lot because of his senility. The senility was pouring salt on the wound. The wound was people did not support his policies. They thought his policies sucked. And the reason why he had such a low approval rating was not because of his senility. His low approval rating was because of his policies. And so I think what we're going to do, I think what you're going to see is this bait and switch tactic that the Democrats are banking on is not going to work just based solely on the very low approval ratings for this administration when it comes to the economy. So even if it's not an official recession, I think people are hurting enough. Even Kamala's admitting it. She's doing everything she can to distance herself from Biden's economic policies, even though she was running around championing Bidenomics. And of course, Trump is not going to let her get away with that in the debate. You championed Biden economics. You said it was working, and now you're saying it's not working. We need to do something new. Which is it? Were you lying then, or are you lying now? So hopefully that's could be enough. Anita, J.D. Vance spoke about the problem of food is causing problems with pesticides, causing serious problems in people's health. Do you think we can depend upon changes in the food industry when Trump and Vance are elected? Absolutely. If RFK is there, that's the MAHA. That's Make America Healthy Again. Food freedom and health, food health in particular, are top priorities for Robert Kennedy because he sees that as part of the culture of health, that is part of an overall flourishing culture that we're all suffering from right now with being taken over by big ag and big pharma and the like. They're not interested in our health; they're interested in control, and so that's the kind of freedom that a MAGA victory in November promises. But that's, in fairness, that is with Robert and Nicole joining forces. Jules, I asked that question during our emergency training for this election. I was told that our ballots in Illinois haven't been printed yet, but I also learned that with 7 people in the polling place, it's possible to cheat. The 23 hours workday is exhausting, and it's difficult to catch the little things. How can I tell everyone what to look for in their paper ballot in Illinois? Not sure the other states. The electronic ballots do not have backup signatures from judges. Yeah, I don't know specifically, Jules, on Illinois. I would check in, probably go with the Early Vote Action, EVA. That's Scott Pressler's organization. Just go to their website, Early Vote Action, and ask them directly what you can tell them the situation you're in, and see what advice they give you to rectify that. Franz, how does the network society align with archaeofuturism? So network society is going to definitely be the future side of it. That's the way I'm seeing it. It's a good question. It's so funny. I just did a talk the other day on Bitcoin and gold. I should turn those around. Gold and Bitcoin, talking about like the future, the archaeofuture trends of money and monetization. Yeah, I think the network society, and if just making sure everybody knows, a network society means that we are interrelated to one another, not so much by virtue of our proximity. That would have been more the archaeo, right? We know each other because we live in the same town or what have. We now relate to each other by virtue of our mutual hyperconnectivity into the internet. So now we're like what we're doing right now. We're all over the world, and we're all relating to each other in a way that transcends our frontiers. So this is when people ask, "What is globalism entirely bad?" No, globalism is good if it's a servant. If it's a servant for nation, culture, custom, tradition, civilization alike, globalism's fine. So when globalism becomes a master, then it becomes an idol, becomes a tyrant. That's when it's bad. That's when it's evil. So I just see, that's a good question. I'm going to have to reflect on that a little bit because, Franz, because I think there's something there. I think there's a lot of development there. So, prima facie, my initial reaction is it is the future of the archaeofuture. It enables us to relate to one another in such a way so as to be able to celebrate our customs, cultures, and traditions. But it's a new way of being able to relate to one another that where the technology ends up working together with tradition in order to foster a more archaeofuture society. So, and then for those of you who don't know, archaeofuture is simply that. It's the notion, theorists argue that our future is going to be more traditionalist, civilizationalist, religious, as tradition and technology work together rather than get pushed away as separate. Good question, Franz. I'll have to contemplate that a little bit. Ryan, what do you think RFK Jr. voters will do in Michigan, Wisconsin with him still on the ballot? Yeah, I kind of answered that earlier. So those who are all in on the realignment thus far look like they're going to vote for Trump. They're going to vote for Trump because that's what Robert and Nicole said explicitly. We're voting for Trump. You vote for Trump. You can. This is your, as Robert Barnes calls it, this is your permission slip to vote for Trump. That's 60%. There's another 40% of RFK voters who are not voting for Trump. They're not interested. They're either voting for another third party candidate, or they're voting for Kamala, or they're not voting at all. And I think it's that portion that will actually vote for. Ironically, it may end up working in our advantage because maybe that 2%, or sorry, that 20% that was going to vote for Kamala will not, and they'll just go ahead and vote for RFK as a protest vote to both candidates. So I don't think it should affect us right now. I'm not seeing anything that shows that it would. Rock Dog, Dr. Steve, under international law, can only ask for asylum from the first country you set foot in from yours. So under international law, all these people failed to ask Mexico for asylum, so they should be immediately sent back across the border to them. What's your thought? Yeah, I mean, the law's just been, you know this, Rock Dog. The law's been totally weaponized right now by globalists who are in power and who only care about that power. So they will manipulate the law and exploit the law or ignore the law in any way they need to, so as to maintain their power and affluence. But I mean, in many ways, this was remain in Mexico policy of Trump. He was sort of exploiting that. Of if we catch you and you cross the border, and we are supposed to process you through our own law system, at the very least, you could stay in the first country you passed into, either Guatemala or Mexico. So that was the rationale for that remain in Mexico. You will, as you're being processed, you will stay outside the country, and I'm a huge supporter of that, obviously. And that's that, gang. All right, amazing week, without question, with this new alignment with Kennedy and Trump. It continues to surge, all as Kamala continues to implode. We'll keep our eyes very sharply gazed on how things develop. And in the meantime, have a wonderful weekend, and make sure you give a big hug to your loved ones. Love you guys. God bless. Bye-bye.